Good morning. Today is the second day of ER, the 10th of May, and we're finishing up Parsha Kedoshim. It's a very short Parsha when it's alone. It only has 64 verses. And today we're going to look at the seventh reading, the sixth, even though there's a lot more action in the sixth. Let's look at the very final verse of this Parsha, Leviticus 20:27. So it says, a man or a woman who is a diviner or a clairvoyant, meaning someone who sees into the future, as it were, must be put to death. And like we saw earlier this week, they must be pelted with stones. Their blood is their own fault. So we explained this whole thing about pelting with stones. We explained what it means. What I want to focus on is why is this such a what does this even mean? What is this diviner and clairvoyant? Why are they? It's not exactly idolatry. It's not worshiping a false god, and so it doesn't fall under that category. Again, in Hebrew they're called Ov and Idoni. There's a few other types. There's a Menachesh and a Meonin. All these types are discussed in Parshat Kitetse in Deuteronomy. Here we're only getting a little taste of it, but these are considered to be the worst, the diviner and the clairvoyant. What exactly is the problem with that? And this, by the way, is the issue with astrology, with all kinds of divinations that there are in the world. So first I want to dispel a little bit of the misunderstanding regarding the punishment. Punishment in Torah is only when someone takes their actions public. You can't really have punishment by man, by a court, when something is hidden. And that's one of the big principles, that hanistarot laHashem Elokeinu, that which is concealed, is God's responsibility. V'aniglot lanu l'vaneinu ad olam, and those things that are brought out publicly, that we see, that which is revealed to us, is our responsibility. So in Judaism there's a very strong frowning upon going into someone's private matters. In other words, what he keeps private or she keeps private is between he or she and God. And as long as it's not taken public, it's not our concern. Now, what do we mean not our concern? We don't mean to say that we shouldn't care at all about other people, because, okay, they're going to suffer whatever they suffer, it's their problem. No, if I know about someone doing something in private, even though there's no legal obligation to punish them in any way, I should take interest in the person and try to help them if I can. But as long as the person doesn't take it public, and what does it mean by public? That he is warned by messengers of the court. Cease and desist from doing this, then it's not the court's business. And they have no responsibility of taking care of it in any way. So that's a very important point in general about everything that we had here. And that's one of the explanations for why both in last week's Parsha and in this week's Parsha we repeat the same prohibitions. Why repeat them twice? Because the first time was just to say, this is how the sages understand it. The first time was to say this is forbidden. The second time was to say that there is a punishment. And it's not the same thing. Something can be forbidden, and as long as it's done in private, it's only forbidden. But when it's taken into the public sphere and everybody knows about it, then it becomes something that needs to be punished. And so there are two different aspects to all these prohibitions. So again, even if a person is doing it privately, it's still prohibited. It doesn't make it okay. It's just not the task, it's not the responsibility of the people, of the public to get involved. So that, with that out of the way, it needs more discussion, but that's the basic principle. What's wrong with an Ov and Yiduni? What's wrong with this diviner and the clairvoyant? Why are they singled out? Again, this is not idolatry. They're not doing anything that is like serving a false god. They could completely believe in God. But what they're doing is they're providing us with some kind of inside information, as it were. What's wrong with that? Let's say that someone has the ability to foretell the future. And who knows how they do it? So, first of all, we assume that that doesn't exist. That they are confidence men, meaning they are cheating people. So at the very least, and again, they're doing it publicly, meaning they've set up shop, like you see in America, occultist or palm reader or crystal ball reader or coffee reader or tarot card reader or whatever it is, and you see these little shops along main streets. So first of all, they're cheating the public because there is no such thing. It's nonsense. We all know that it's based on psychology, cheap psychology. There's nothing behind it. Okay, so find them. Why would they be stoned? Meaning, why do they deserve to die about this? This is a very deep question. Like, okay, so they're leading people astray. Astray from what? This is not idolatry. It's something else. So this runs contrary to, again, something we'll see in Deuteronomy, which is called to be sincere with God. What does it mean to be sincere with God? A person has to live their life planning and putting their trust only in God, not in anything else. Not in any kind of cheat sheet that they have or anything else that somehow, all these things, what they try to do is they try to prevent me from having a relationship, a direct relationship with God. And having a direct relationship with God is not so simple. Why is it not simple? Because He doesn't work for me. I work for Him. When I try to divine or clairvoyantly know the future, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to somehow subject God to me and saying, oh, I figured out how you work, and therefore I can get you to be subservient to me, or at least your ways, or at least your intentions. And I know them. It's a little bit like the famous thing from Groucho Marx, that I would never want to go to a country club that would accept me as a member. Okay. If God is something that you can divine, that you can figure out, that's not the God you want to worship. The God that you want to worship is much greater than the sum total of all knowledge in the universe. It has to be. Otherwise, why would I even have any kind of relationship? I don't have a relationship with a newspaper, although maybe some people do, but it's like foolish. It's stupid. I have a relationship with something that is the source, that is greater than everything that I see, everything that I know. We can see one of these examples in something that's related to what we discussed yesterday, the story of Saul. And Saul was Samuel's first anointment. He first anointed Saul to be the king. Why did Samuel even do this? Samuel grew up, he was raised in the tabernacle itself in a time that the Jewish people were still tribal. And tribalism is one of the worst forms of social structure. It inevitably leads to civil war, because that's how tribalism is. And you have to grow out of it. And Samuel was a witness to the worst civil war that there was in the Jewish people ever. and this was against the tribe of Benjamin. The whole story is in Judges, and you can read about it. And he saw the end of that war, when finally the tribe of Benjamin was allowed back into the Jewish people. And Samuel saw that naturally we have to evolve to a higher type of social structure. And not only do we have to evolve just to survive, but it's actually a commandment from the Torah. The Torah commands us, once we come into the land of Israel, to appoint a king, to create a monarchy. And a monarchy, to appoint a king, is no mean feat. It means that you have to decide who is going to be the king from all the tribes that are competing with one another. And so at first he anointed Saul. Saul was from the tribe of Benjamin. And you can almost think about it as an attempt to bring Benjamin back in, to give them legitimacy again. But Saul didn't work out. Unfortunately, Samuel did not get to counsel Saul until his very end. He passed away a few months earlier, before Saul did. And Saul felt at a loss. He didn't know how to continue running the kingdom once the architect of the kingdom, Samuel, the prophet, was gone. And so he turned to one of these diviners. And the diviner played whatever game they played. And Saul felt that some person was coming up from wherever he was. And this was supposed to be Samuel. And Samuel tells him what he tells him, whether it's him, it's not him, it doesn't matter. Saul eventually goes to his death. The problem is that if you have a prophet, and prophecy doesn't necessarily mean that you have a prophet who's actually telling you what to do. In Judaism, trust in God comes from the same place that prophecy does. I'll say it in Kabbalistic language, that the prophets all prophesize from the two sfirot, from the two divine emanations known as victory and acknowledgement, Netzach and Hod. Netzach and Hod are also, in Hasidic thought, they're the faculties of active and passive confidence in God, which means that a person makes a plan for their life, and it's considered to be as powerful as a prophecy. The sages build on this, and they say in the Talmud that once a person has decided on a path to serve God, a path in which he wants to pursue, that he wants to follow, he will receive all the help that can be given from above. But that's only when he puts his trust, he puts his confidence in God. The moment that he tries to second guess, and acknowledgement also means tamimut, which means to be sincere with God. The moment that that breaks down and he's no longer sincere with God and he's trying to figure out in some other way, by divining or clairvoyance or whatever it is, he's trying to figure out how to handle himself, then he's forsaken. Then he's lost. He's severed his connection. Because the path of a human being in this world is to have confidence in my relationship with God. That is our path. That is how we need to function. It doesn't really matter what you decide to do with your life, as long as you see it as an ongoing relationship with God in which you have trust that God will help you in any way possible achieve what needs to be achieved, what you've planned for. The moment that you go into divination or clairvoyance or any of these things, you're severing your relationship with God. And a person who systematically tells people, don't build on your relationship with God, rather build on the information that I'm going to give you somehow, is ruining people's purpose in being alive. So though they're not taking their life per se, they are taking the meaning of their life. They are taking the path of their life, the purpose of their life. And so this is a grave, grave sin. to lead people astray, meaning pushing them out of the path of confidence and trust and relationship with God and moving them into some other kind of nonsensical path where somehow some knowledge is going to tell you what you need to do. Whereas the sages and the Torah are very clear. The person who pursues the path of life with sincerity, with trust in God, will achieve his goals. So there's no need for all this divination. It's moot. It doesn't help. All it does is it severs the relationship. And that's what happened to Saul. The moment that he could have continued, he could have somehow figured out that he was still on the same path that Samuel had assigned him as a king. But instead he chose, when Samuel was gone, to give up on his relationship with God and to pursue the diviners and the soothsayers. And because of that, he was killed very quickly after that, unable to continue to pursue his objectives of bringing the Jewish people to a higher state, a higher social structure. So with this, we'll end this week's Parsha, Parashat Kedoshim, and I hope to see you on Sunday when we start Parashat Emor. Shabbat Shalom.